your computers. Great, thanks. My name is Barbara Gorski, and I direct the program that you're sitting here for today. Little story, I'm Jewish, and as Jews, typically, we say grace at the end of dinner. My thought is that maybe we want to see what we're served to see exactly how grateful we want to be for it. I'm not sure why we say it at the end. We bless some bread beforehand, but the big grace comes after. And so I'd kind of like to take that same thought and to start by thanking our panel for being here today. Thank you very much. Which then helps take the pressure off of them, because they've already gotten an applause, and so even if they're lousy, you can leave feeling like, oh, they like me. Our goal today is two things: to have you think about, as a business student, is there a career path available for you within nonprofits? What kind of business work gets done in nonprofits? And the second question that I often get, typically at this point in the semester, is, Dr. Gorski, I really like the culture of the nonprofit, but, you know, I could go and get this job for $60,000 in this business corporate setting. Can I make a living if I choose to go into nonprofits? I like the culture, but we're going to ask you to move down front more. So we're going to look at those questions. We've got some folks with great experience, a variety of experience. As you can see, a variety of ages, some closer to you, some closer to me, so we'll get to hear a wide array of topics. And I do want to point out that on the handout you have, the mission statement for the radio station, for KFAI, what you have in front of you, is actually not their mission statement. I did that thing you're not supposed to do, and this morning went in to make the handout. I should have done this a couple of days ago. And went to their landing page and cut and pasted and didn't read it. And here it was actually their appeal for donations. And I said to
You
Dale,
could just give me cash as you leave.
Exactly. If you're going to make a mistake and put the wrong thing in, the appeal, I guess, is pretty good. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about their mission, and they're going to talk more about this. KFAI is a volunteer-based community radio station that exists to broadcast information, arts, and entertainment, programming for an audience of diverse racial, social, and economic backgrounds. By providing a voice for people ignored or misrepresented by mainstream media, KFAI increases understanding between peoples and communities while fostering the values of democracy and social justice. Kind of a different mission statement than you might hear from other radio stations. So I wanted to make that clear. And I'm going to ask the panelists if they'll begin by introducing themselves. Who are they? What organization do they work with? And what their position is. And if you're paying close attention, you'll realize that we've had one person change on the panel. So let's start way at the end.
My name is Trisha Nelson. I work with Finnegan's and the Finnegan's Community Fund. I think my title here is something operations, but it's actually changed. They call me the kitchen sink. So I do everything from sales coordination to working with our community fund, doing some bookkeeping, some operations and business pieces. So quite a few different things for our organizations.
We'll just go straight up the row.
My name is Neil. I work with Face Forward as a strategy and overall business development consultant.
And I'm Margot Kemp-Johnson with Keystone Community Services, and my position is Director of Community Relations, and what that means is I do a little bit of everything. I coordinate our fundraising, communications, and I am the volunteer coordinator at Keystone.
My name is Dale Connolly. I'm the news director at KFAI Radio, and my job is to work with teams of volunteers to do a weekly morning news and music program and regular news updates through the day, and produce stories and interviews and fix broken things and keep the station on the air.
Let's go in the same order again and tell us more about your organization.
Well, our mission at Finnegan's and the Finnegan's Community Fund is turning beer into food. So what we do is we sell two types of beer, Finnegan's Irish Amber, Finnegan's Blonde Ale, put a product out into the market to make profits, and then we choose to donate those profits back to the community.
Neil?
We foster a more socially aware artist community through education and collaboration. So we have different sets of programming, and that's where we fulfill the education aspect. And then we have different opportunities for artists to come together and especially work across discipline, and that's where we get our collaboration leg of the organization.
And Neil, are you an artist?
I am a musician.
A musician doing, what's your medium?
Hip hop.
Oh, cool. And do you sing? Do you play?
I don't sing, really.
You play. And what do you play?
I don't play either. Hip hop, lyrics.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Now I'm
Sorry.
there. Margot?
Well, Keystone Community Services is a multi-service organization, so we have a whole variety of programs. We're kind of that old-fashioned community center model. We currently have 6 different service sites within St. Paul and the East Metro, and we offer a variety of programs, like I said, everything from, we have 3 food shelf locations, operating the second largest food shelf program in the whole state. We serve about 7,000 people every month in our 3 food shelves. And then we have senior programs, Meals on Wheels programs for seniors, active seniors programs. We work with about 600 seniors throughout the entire metro area, helping them stay in their homes with a team of about 15 case managers that do that. And then we have a handful of youth programs. Everything from after-school tutoring and mentoring to employment programs in our 2 social enterprises, the Express Bike Shop and the Express Yourself Clothing. We really kind of try to maintain that old-fashioned community center where we're the one place in the community in this neighborhood and our neighborhoods where we serve to be the place where people can come that need help, and we will either provide them with the services or help them access the resources they need to get their basic needs met.
Thanks, Margot.
We're a radio station, and we're broadcast 24 hours a day. We have a professional staff of 6 people, and everybody else is a volunteer. Primarily, the goal is access. KFAI was established 35 years ago at a time when radio was somewhat different than it is now in that we didn't have digital media, and so if you wanted to have your voice heard by the larger community, you felt pretty much shut out if you didn't have a newspaper or a radio station or a TV station. And so the idea behind KFAI is that it provides really uncommon access to ordinary people who want to have their voices heard, whether that's expressed by coming in, doing a hip-hop show or a Zydeco show or doing a 1-hour talk show on something that is a passion for you. And so, that's what we're about, kind of openness and communication and working against what might otherwise, what many people who are associated with our station call the corporate media. Really, in a sense, it's radio as an art form.
And Dale, where's the station located?
We're at just steps away from the intersection of Cedar and Riverside in Minneapolis on the 3rd floor of the Bailey Building.
And Margot, what about you? Where is your office located?
My office is in our administrative headquarters, which is the Merriam Park Community Center. But like I said, we do have 6 service sites. So we have our 3 food shelves on University and Pryor, 1 up on Rice and Arlington, 1 in Roseville. And then we have our Youth Express program, which is on Selby and Lexington Parkway. And then we have an after-school program in McDonough Homes Public Housing.
And Neil, face forward, where are you located?
We don't have a formal building, but we have a lot of partnerships with different community-based organizations that host different events, whether they be open mics, artist gatherings, art galleries, things like
So when
that.
you all need to have a staff meeting, what do you do?
We just meet different coffee shops, different
Coffee.
places around the cities. Again, a lot of our partners will give us a space that we can meet.
Okay. And Finnegan's, where are you?
We are downtown Minneapolis in Elliott Park neighborhood.
Okay.
So, kinda east
So we have
downtown.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, just saying east downtown. So.
Okay. So we have nonprofits ranging from beer to art to basic services to radio. Quite an array of things. How did you get into your position? Talk a little bit about your academic background, previous work. why nonprofits, maybe even why this organization? Margot?
Well, I think my path to where I am right now is kind of unique. I fell into it by accident. I thought I was applying for a different job when I went in, and I ended up applying to work in a after-school program for youth. So at the time, it was a program for court-ordered adolescents. So it was an alternative school program. And the more they started talking about the job, the more excited I was about that job than the one I thought I was applying for. So I've been with Keystone for 22 years, and I've held many, many different positions there. So when I started there, I was my other career was bartending, and and I just wanted to do something to kind of be more involved in the community and kind of get a real job. And so I applied for this, and I worked in youth services. Was a direct service provider, so I drove a van around with kids for about 2 years, and then I moved into an administrative position, kind of doing all the office stuff. And then at the time we had very few computers, but I kind of liked computers, so I ended up becoming the network administrator. So I have about 6 years experience in network administration, so kind of learned on the job, and then continued to change positions there and do things. So for me, it's been a really great opportunity because I've had the flexibility to try a lot of different things, and just did discover that I was most interested in organizational management. So that is what I went back to school for, and that's what my background is in organizational management and communications.
Okay.
And I was in the youth program, kind of in the many positions for 19 years. 4 years ago, that program sadly lost its funding, and the program closed, but I was invited to stay at Keystone in this new capacity as the Director of Community Relations, which is a whole new thing for me. So it's been pretty exciting. It's been something different every 3 to 4 years for me. So.
Did you ever confess at that first job interview that you thought you were there for something else?
After I was hired, I did, yes.
Interesting, interesting. Neil, what about you? College degree or what?
Yeah, I'm a mechanical engineer and biomechanics by background. I've had experience in a lot of different fields, ranging from developing a children's toy and bringing that to market to a new medical breathing device, and just really did my best to scatter my experiences, just because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wasn't a 9-to-5 type guy, and I always struggled with feeling like I had to pick something, one passion, one interest. And music has really began to emerge as a platform where all of my interests can kind of coexist. And so I graduated last May. I took a job offer, and then I left a couple months later. And so I've been unemployed technically for the past 6 to 9 months, really trying to build out this music platform. And the reason why I sought out Face Forward and why I'm working with them is because they're aligned with a lot of the same things I am. Making art that not only speaks to who you are, but also resonates with the community and can impact others.
How many folks at Face Forward draw a salary from Face Forward?
0.
0, so it's all volunteer.
Yes.
And I won't point her out, but the executive director is here in the audience, but wasn't feeling very well.
Right.
So she doesn't get a salary either.
She doesn't.
Works another job. And so you're not working another job, you're really focusing on starting up this entrepreneurial spin. Interesting. Yep. Interesting. How do you explain that to your parents?
Working on it. I don't know. I think that I've done a pretty good job of building a line of credibility with them, with the things I've done in my past, and I just think they're confident in me. They know that whatever I'll do, I'll figure it out, I guess. Okay. And I'm surrounded by a lot of great people. I've met a lot of fantastic people since I made that jump, since I left my job, and my network just continues to grow and grow and grow. And I've gained a lot of value and a lot of insight just from being a part of so many different things, and that's really allowed for a more holistic approach, to be developed behind the music. So I think sometimes they're concerned, but at the same time, I think that they believe and support me.
I trust you.
Yeah.
Great answer, because I think so often we're torn between our passion and maybe our calling and trying to live what people think is a regular life. And sometimes we've got to have the courage to take that leap and and do what we're called to do. You're selling beer. How do you explain that to your parents? What's your background?
Well, I, interestingly enough, grew up in the beer business, so
Ah,
my
so no
family was in
explanation
the beer.
needed.
Yep, so it kind of made sense. I graduated from St. Thomas and actually studied abroad in Ireland, so I found Finnegan's through a liquor store. After I had gone to Ireland, found the Irish beer, loved the beer, and started reading the packaging and absolutely loved the mission of the company and what the company did. So maybe like 6 months later, I sent an email over the website. They had no employees at that point in time, so just kind of said, here's my background. I would love to help you out if you need any help. And my timing was impeccable, so I really lucked out. Got an internship, started working full time a few years later, and here I am. So,
Great.
yeah,
What was your degree?
business communications and international studies.
Okay, from here. And graduated what year?
2007.
Okay, so you went through Business 200.
I did, yes. Yep.
What did you do for Business 200?
I actually worked with a independent living home, I think.
Oh, okay.
Did
okay.
volunteer hours there.
Who is here that's working currently at Finnegan's, doing their Business 200 at Finnegan's? Yeah, the first time the student came to a class and said, I'm doing Business 200 with this beer company, and I was like, oh, wait, it has to be a nonprofit. Oh, it is. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. I was kind of shocked that there was this beer company that had a business strategy of being a nonprofit. So,
It's an interesting combination, for sure.
yeah, it is interesting. And the only nonprofit beer company in the U.S. or the world?
There have been quite a few popping up lately.
Oh, okay,
Yep. So there's
okay.
another one in the cities. We actually had an international happy hour with one in the UK that donates 100% of their profits to prostate cancer. I've heard of a couple. There's one out in Boston, and I think one in the southern U.S. too that we just heard about. So they're coming
Wow,
about, which is
great.
exciting. So.
That is exciting. Dale, what about you? Tell us about your path.
I went to Southern Illinois University and studied radio and television, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to be, at first I wanted to be in television, and then I realized radio was so much easier. But on graduation, it was pretty clear that although I wanted to be on the air, I didn't really have the temperament or the kind of personality that was going to succeed in commercial broadcasting, and so I started looking more closely at public radio. And this was back in the late 70s at a time when public radio was still kind of a new idea, and found a job here in Minnesota and worked for Minnesota Public Radio. That was my first job out of college. And I stayed with NPR for 34 years. And then they fired me, and I was unemployed for a year, and then I got a job at KFAI. Because everything that I knew was related to public radio.
Okay.
So if you want a fun adventure, try getting a job in anything other than public radio when that's all you've done for 34 years.
Let's talk about that. In public radio, NPR, your organization are nonprofits.
Yes.
And so can I extrapolate that going from nonprofits in general to for-profits would be challenging, or do you think that's specifically
I don't
true
know.
with the radio?
Yeah, I have no idea. Since I've only had the one kind of experience,
Okay.
I'm not sure. I figured it was just me. Somebody else could probably do it just fine. I mean, the skills are transferable, I would think. Just didn't happen in my case.
Okay. Margot, what do you think? Can you move back and forth between profit, nonprofit?
Yeah, I think absolutely you can. I think, like Dale said, a lot of the skills are transferable, and I certainly have a lot of coworkers and colleagues I've known over the years that have actually gone back and forth. Several, in fact, that left nonprofits for profits and came back to nonprofits again. So I think it's definitely possible. It depends on kind of what you're interested in doing and where you're looking. And again, it's how you gather what you can as far as building your skills in the nonprofit. I mean, like I said, for me personally, I've tried to soak up every opportunity I have to learn something new within the nonprofit. So I've had a really rich and varied experience personally, but that's because that's what I've looked for in it, and I've found those opportunities and capitalized on them. So,
And can I just add? I think that Margot's experience is more typical for nonprofits than my personal experience, and that I've seen a lot of people who, because a nonprofit is small and has to do the most that it can with limited resources, a lot of people get opportunities to do different things along the way that they didn't even imagine themselves doing.
Yep, I'd say that's true.
And I definitely want to echo that the, one of the true benefits of working in the nonprofit, and Tricia, you said this, of being the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
You really do get to be a generalist. And many times in corporations, because there are many more people working, you move in and you're pretty much a specialist right away. And so I really encourage students to think about nonprofits because it lets them do some more exploring before they narrow their track. And if you like the variety, you can continue to do that. The research echoes what you said, Margot, that folks who came from that went from nonprofit to for-profit come back in high numbers. Folks who come from corporate for-profit and go to nonprofit tend to stay. Now, I haven't seen research that kind of calls out the personalities of that and say, you know, are different personality types more likely to do that? But there is something, it seems to be attractive about the nonprofit. I'm, of course, going to try to brainwash all of you in this one session because I only, get a few opportunities to talk to you about nonprofits. Typical day. Tricia, tell us about a typical day, about this kitchen sink work.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. My days are always different. You talk about going from for-profit to nonprofit. I get to do both every day, which is super exciting. So we might have, a sales meeting one morning, so I'm doing a lot of reporting, I'm working with a lot of data, and then, doing something like this where we're reaching out and kind of sharing the Finnegan story, the Finnegan's experience. That's very important to us, and we don't have a lot of marketing dollars, so sharing kind of what we do is very big, very important. We have an internship program, so I do interviews for that and kind of work on the programming side of that. Yeah, just very varied. I also get to work with our board. So we have two different boards. We have a for-profit kind of advisory board and then our nonprofit board, which is much more directional and regulatory. So I get to do board support for them. So I might be getting ready for one of those meetings. Yeah, all the way to helping out with our nonprofit side. So maybe doing impact numbers, translating how much our donations turn into fresh produce, which food shelves we work with, building relationships with them. So it's really, really a mixed bag for what I do each day, which I love. It's awesome.
Tricia, do you work with Keystone Food Shelves?
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah,
I was going to say,
I made a
you
note.
two definitely need
note.
to chat. Yeah.
So, but I think in the past we've worked with the Express Bike Shop. So
Oh, okay.
a long time ago.
Okay. Margot, talk about that merger from a business perspective. So you kind of gathered up these two, one other organization that had two divisions.
Yeah, last year we merged with Youth Express, which was an already existing, already very successful nonprofit serving youth. So it was a youth employment and social enterprise model. So they actually they do an amazing training program where they teach kids, young people, all the kind of skills and concepts they need to run a small business through an interactive classroom setting, and then the youth can apply for jobs in their two social enterprises. So we operate the Express Bike Shop and Express Yourself Clothing, and the youth then are participating in kind of their first job experience and doing things at a much higher level than they would at a typical first job experience. So in their apprenticeships, they are actually doing the marketing for the stores, they're running the front of house for the stores, they're doing deposits, they're running back of house, and they're learning skills. And in the bike shop, they actually learn how to physically fix and repair bikes. And in the clothing store, they learn about fashion merchandising and some other things. Keystone, when the program I had worked in for many years sadly left, we had this void for youth services. So we were on a hunt for quality youth programming to kind of build back up our youth kind of arm of our programming. And Youth Express happened to be wanting to expand and grow, but kind of didn't really have the capacity and resources to be able to do that the way they'd like to. And it was kind of perfect timing that we were looking for something and they were looking for the capacity that we could bring to them. So we merged with them last year, and it was a great time, and it's really helped us all grow. I'm just going to share quickly, if it's okay, one exciting thing that's happened. through our Keystone connections in our corporate business partner program, we introduced the Youth Express people to one of our corporate partners, Windsor Learning, who do literacy training and tutoring. And we've built this model where we have now kids, so young people who grew up in our after-school program, the Hmong Youth Program, are now coming back as paid tutors. So they've gone through the Urban Apprentice programming, and now they've gotten their first job as paid tutors, tutoring and mentoring the younger kids in the program. So it's just this amazing kind of collaborative effort where one of the business partners came in with the materials to make this happen, and now we have young people who are getting jobs where they have not been able to get jobs that are right in their homes, like right where they live, so it's super convenient. They're actually contributing to their family income, so they all live in public housing already, and then the young people are getting this amazing curriculum and working on their literacy, and it's been happening not quite a year, and we're seeing amazing results already, so it's super exciting. And that's kind of what I do all day, is find those connections where things can be help to support what we're trying to do in the community. So
That partnership notion is particularly important in nonprofits.
Yeah.
How do we connect? I'm sitting here and I think, Neil and Dale need to chat because you need to be on his radio station, and those kinds of connections happen all the time. It is a different feel than having a competitor. Really, you're really looking at how do we partner, how do we best work together. But you do have competitors. If we look at competitors being, where are your clients, your volunteers, and your donors when they're not with you? Tricia, are you in competition with others? Are you a microbrewery? You're not a microbrewery.
No, we're a contract brewer.
Okay. So are
so-
you in, when I go to the, liquor store or whatever, who are your competitors? What are people drinking when they're not drinking Finnegan's?
Yeah, a lot of people who drink Finnegan's typically drink local craft brews. So we're in that local craft market, and I think as a group, yes, we compete against each other, but our biggest competitor are the domestics. So we're always looking to gain market share from like Budweiser, Miller. So support local beer, and if you don't drink Finnegan's, So any other beers out there would be, our competition, something a little bit heavier and a sessionable brew.
Do you sit around and talk about things like market share?
Absolutely. Yep.
Interesting. What is your market share at this point, do you think?
Gosh,
If you're allowed to say. And
Yeah,
maybe that's not your area.
So Finnegan's, how we sit in the local craft brew market, we're the fifth largest local brand.
Okay.
So that's for Minnesota volume. And then as far as local beers compared to kind of the bigger domestics, I want to say we're like under 4%. So you look at a state like Oregon, I think, is at 40% local beers compared to others. So we have a lot of room to grow. You see a lot of local beers here in the Twin Cities market, but outside of that, we have a lot of space. So
if I'm doing my SWOT analysis, then I can see the opportunities there.
yes,
with that.
absolutely.
And I just want to reinforce, drink Finnegan's, feed the hungry. Next time you're drinking a beer, of course, if you're of age.
If you're of age, yes.
Drink Finnegan's, feed the hungry. What percentage of your consumers purchase it because of your mission?
It's interesting. We did a market research study a couple years ago and found that a majority of the male drinkers drink it because it's a craft beer, it's Irish, so they drink it for the taste profile. Majority of women drinkers drink it because of the mission, and they like the taste. So it's interesting. It's kind of split by gender on
There's
that
a gender
front.
split. That's interesting.
But we have a lot of people where we do these sampling events, and you say, "Oh, have you heard of Finnegan's?" They say, "Yeah, I love it. It's my favorite beer." "Oh, great. Do you know about our giving mission?" And then they'll say, "What? What are you talking about?" So even people who have been drinking it forever, it takes a minute to kind of get that message through because it is such a different concept, I think, for the product. So.
Dale, who are your major competitors? And how would you slice that pie? What do you think of as your competitors?
Well, anything that uses up your attention is a competitor for us because we're doing radio programs and we have a website and we want you to listen in either of those ways or through a smartphone app. So we're just trying to get people's ears.
Okay, okay. Do you feel that you compete more against other nonprofit radio or against commercial radio?
Well, I think people who would be inclined to like KFAI are listening to other nonprofit radio stations.
Okay.
But, I mean, the thing about KFAI is we have about 100 different programs. And so, you know, if you love commercial radio, there still might be a program in there that you would really enjoy. But it's roll of the dice as to whether you would ever tune us in at the right time to hear it.
Okay.
So in that sense, digital media has expanded our opportunities because you can go to our website or use our smartphone app and choose a program and listen to it at your leisure. But you still have to find out about it.
Okay, okay. Neil, what about you? Who's doing what you guys are doing?
No one.
Say that more. Come on. Neil, who's doing what you guys are doing?
No one.
Oh, come on. I want to hear the, well, no one, you know, the enthusiasm.
You know, I think there are a couple arts organizations in the cities that are doing something similar, but we've taken a hard look at their infrastructure and made sure that our infrastructure complements and doesn't compete against them. For example, Springboard for Arts and Intermedia Arts are both very strong organizations in the arts sector, and we see them as supporters, not competitors by any means.
And we tend to say that in nonprofits, like, oh, we don't compete, yeah. But from a business perspective, we really do have to think about where are our resources if they're not here.
Definitely. I think that only holds true if the services you're offering are the same, and our services are not the same as those two, and that's why I think that our infrastructure really complements theirs and doesn't compete with theirs.
Okay.
But yeah, I would agree if our services were the same.
Okay. Marketing. No, I continue a little bit with the marketing efforts. And particularly, Margot, I want to focus on what you're doing. How do folks, so you work with people living in poverty, people who are suffering with hunger and food instability, the elderly, non-native English speakers. You're not running full-page ads in the newspaper to say, hey, we're here, let us help, or let us work with you. What's your marketing strategy?
Well, it's different. It depends on what it is we're talking about. Certainly, to get the word out to people who may be in need of our services, that happens in a variety of ways. We do some community outreach events, and the biggest thing we do is provide quality services, and then word of mouth pretty much takes care of it. As far as trying to recruit clients, that's not an issue. There's certainly way more people that come to us looking for help than you know we can even help all the time. So so that isn't really where our marketing comes into play. Our marketing would be much more in the donor area. So we do our marketing, and I do a lot of work with designers and writers and copywriters and things for our marketing, and that is about telling our story of who we are for support, to garner support for what we do. So,
And that's really then aimed to funders, that sort of area.
Yep, funders, individual donors, and then businesses. So I think that's our three-legged stool of support is you know, corporate funding, faith community funding, individual funding, and then grants and some government funding. So.
Okay. Let's continue with the funding talk. So there are actually 8 ways that nonprofits can generate revenue. And Margot just said grants. And grants come in a variety of ways, but we'll specifically say grants from private foundations, individual donations, and corporate involvement. And corporate donations come in 3 kinds. There are cash, in-kind services, so that the bakery will give you the day-old baked goods, and then also volunteers, which they've got to figure out how to put that on their books. So Wells Fargo, for instance, is the largest donor of volunteers to junior achievement. So you have grants, individual donations, corporate donations. Dale, where does your revenue come from?
Similar. Individual donations primarily. If you've ever heard of public radio pledge week, you know what that's about. We simply go on the air and ask people to give us money, and many of them do. We also get underwriting, so you can have a long discussion about whether that's just a fancy word for advertising, but we put paid messages on the air under a set of rules that govern how we talk about the product or service that is underwriting our programming. We also get money from the government through an organization called the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Government money both on the state and federal level.
Okay, so adding to our list then is state, federal, and sometimes local tax monies that will come. Neil, revenues into your organization?
What's that?
How do you get revenues into your organization? How do you guys make money?
Well, I think
Because nobody's paid, but you still have bills to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think for a while, we were struggling with that. We were trying to build an infrastructure, design an infrastructure for funding. And as a result, we kept getting, these questions asked, how are you getting your funding? Where's your revenue coming in? How are you going to scale, right? And I don't think those were questions that the organization was quite ready to answer. So instead of designing an infrastructure for funding, we built an infrastructure that would attract funding. So we built a three-phase approach. So the first would be building an infrastructure, the second would be refining our programming, and the third would then be seeking that funding. So we intentionally built an infrastructure, built the organization on programs that would require minimal to no funding at all. And we've been able to do that very well. For when I first entered the organization, we had about 60 to 70 different artists, but our engagement was very low. Probably 15 to 20% max. So we cut that roster down, and now we're at about 35 to 40 solid artists, where we're getting more like 70 to 80% engagement. We're getting really creative with developing some metrics, just because that can be tricky in the art realm. We live in a very results-driven society. People want to know how things are actually being converted, and so much of art you can't measure. You can't measure passion. You can't measure feeling. And so we're trying to get creative in that regard with establishing some metrics that help with that, and we're getting pretty close. So we're in the middle of stage 2, nearing stage 3, which will be attracting funding.
And is the assumption then that that's when staff will be starting to get paid?
Yes.
And how many years from inception to then will have passed?
So Face Forward has been around. I've only been with them for probably 4 to 6 months, but they've been around for a few years. I think the first few years they were trying to figure out, really what they were about. They weren't quite sure what they wanted to do. They knew they wanted to serve as a hub for artists to come together and support each other. This has really been the first pilot year where a solid mission and vision and some core pillars have been put in place. So I'd say, to answer your question, if we started with this previous year, that being inception to funding, I'd say we're probably 9 to 12, maybe 15 months away from that.
Okay.
And that's large-scale funding.
And you host events where there's a ticket cost to get in, right?
Yep.
So one of your revenue methods then is a fee for service.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tricia, what about you?
We do a few different things. So obviously the beer company itself donates the profits, but then we are also able to collect individual donations through the community fund. So when we're at events, when we're at samplings, we have a little jar out. We don't actively seek those donations because we believe in selling a product, making that profit, and donating it. But we have it out there. And then we also have this really cool thing that's kind of developed. It wasn't really planned as a revenue stream, but a lot of the events we do, we supply volunteers for. So we're able to engage people who want to help out. And then we are the volunteer service for like Autumn Brew Review, or Soundset is one that we did last year. And then those organizations actually make a donation to the community fund for the volunteer services.
Okay.
So that's a really kind of unique way that we've been able to raise more money that goes directly to the nonprofit. What else do we do? We get some people who donate the corporate donation piece, where they donate through their paychecks from like Target or Ecolab or those organizations. What am I forgetting? Yeah, I think those are our main pieces. So.
Okay. So another piece that's a fee for service provided when you provide volunteers, but you also have this profit center within your nonprofit, basically, or next to it.
Yeah, so they're kind of like sister companies. So
Okay.
we run, Finnegan's Inc. Profit is a very good word for us. So we're very, very business driven, and it was interesting to hear Neil talk about kind of when you have an idea and you're trying to fund something, sometimes you have to go with the idea that costs less. And how do you be innovative so that, okay, you might not have investors or you might not have the cash flow to do something, but how can you leverage your partnerships and your relationships to get things done then that at some point is valuable that can bring in that revenue. So that's really, I think, kind of the basis behind Finnegan's Inc., so our beer side. And we make our donations twice a year from Finnegan's Inc. to the community fund. And the kind of unique thing about that is that we actually track the profits by territory, so where the beer is sold. I think we have 7 or 8 territories in Minnesota. Those profits stay in those kind of areas and are used to purchase produce from a local farm in that area, and then the produce goes to a food shelf in that area. So we're really proud of the fact that our revenues, our profits are sustainable. They stay local to that community. And we're really excited about providing fresh local produce, too, for people in need, because we believe they should have healthy diets, too.
Right, that's an interesting notion about the whole hunger issue, and can't we just fill folks up with Cheetos, and if they get enough calories, we'll be okay with that.
Yeah.
There's going to be much more demand for the work you're doing at Finnegan's and also at Keystone with the reduction in foods in the SNAP program. That will start to ripple across many organizations, I think. I want to ask you some personal questions, and so I'm coming. First I want to tell you what these 8 funding sources are. Corporate, individual donations, grants through private foundations, tax dollars. You can have a fee for service, as we've talked about. You can have a profit center within a nonprofit or in conjunction with your nonprofit. So here at St. Thomas, we're nonprofit, but we do summer conference housing, and so that's a profit center for us. Many organizations do investments now. There was a lot of that going on, and then we hit this economic crunch, and then it's starting to pick up again. And the 8th area is fundraising, which, does Keystone do a lot of fundraising? I would think. Or no? Where you have events?
We do. We don't do, well, we're celebrating our 75th anniversary this year, and we're having our first big fundraising event.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Since, I don't know that we've ever done them before.
Wow.
Not in the last 20 years, for sure.
Okay,
So,
interesting,
yeah,
interesting.
so.
You've really been able to manage your revenue, what you needed for revenue without doing them. Mm-hmm. Many nonprofits will say that fundraised monies are their single most important source of funding, not because it's the largest, but because it comes with the fewest restrictions. Who here is a finance major who's graduating this spring in just a few weeks? Will you please stand and introduce yourself to our audience, if you would?
Jake Lauer.
Jake Lauer, this is your final exam question, and should you fail this question, you will not be graduating in spring. Are you ready?
Yeah.
And no help from the audience. All right, no phone a friend or any of that. Jake, let's assume that you're my financial counselor, and I come to you and say, Jake, what do I do so that I can maximize my potential earnings while minimizing my risk? What's the strategy I use? It's one word.
Diversify.
Excellent. Round of applause for Jake. Very good. You will graduate. So you want to diversify your funding, your investment strategies is exactly what nonprofits need to do. The challenge with diversifying your funding strategies is that with each additional funding strategy, there becomes different kind of record keeping you need to do, different kind of reporting. You almost get to a point when you accept a new kind of funding strategy that you might end up costing yourself another staff person to manage all of that. So it's a difficult mix. The last traditional nonprofit that I worked with, nonprofit organization, St. Thomas is a nonprofit, but the last agency I worked with in DC, we got most of our funding from the Department of Labor, and after 7 years that was cut, and it was our primary source. And we were working with at-risk kids. Department of Labor saw that as useful. If we kept kids, they could graduate, it'd be better for the labor work in the country, and DOL cut our funds. And I remember our executive director called us together. There were about 20 of us on the payroll, and we met in the little conference room, and he says, does anybody have any ideas how we're going to get $7.1 million back? And I thought, what do you do? Like, do we run a really big bake sale? I mean, how do you make that money up? We weren't very diversified. We didn't have very good business minds. We had a lot of folks who cared a lot about kids and education. But we limped along for a little while, and then the organization folded. Every piece of research we did said we were doing a phenomenal job at reducing the dropout rate. It did not matter. If we couldn't keep cash flowing, we couldn't do our work. Yesterday at the panel, somebody said, manage the money or you can't manage your mission. Or it was very close to that. And I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's absolutely true. The whole financial piece is really critical. Would the four of you be willing to go stand in front of the tables for a moment?
Can we say no?
Certainly.
I told them we'd have some odd questions for them. Neil, is this what you typically wear to work? Did you dress up for us today? No. So this is what you typically wear to work. Tricia, what about you? Okay. Tricia, how many sets of professional clothes do you own, like a suit?
I actually just gave away my suits. I donated it to a thing. I wear suits. I do dress up for like conferences or big meetings, things like that, but never a suit. I have some blazers.
A couple of blazers, so you might do that mix and match kind of thing. So even when you're meeting with corporate partners or a liquor distributor, you can dress pretty casually.
Yeah, business casual.
Margot, what about you? Did you dress up for us today? Is this what you look like going to work most days?
It varies. If I'm out in the public, I try to wear something like this, but if I'm just in the office on the phone and on the computer, I'm in jeans and a sweater maybe.
How many suits do you own?
Two.
And Dale, how many suits do you own?
No, I don't have a suit either. This is pretty typical for me, but I should say that when I worked at Minnesota Public Radio, I was a disc jockey there for 26 years, but in that kind of nonprofit, and it's very big, there were a lot of people who wore very nice suits. And they, I'm sure, had the same clothing budget that anyone in the corporation would have. And, well, I mean, you can see Minnesota Public Radio is quite successful. So that's also a possible nonprofit model to follow.
Thank you, and you're free to sit down. Thank you for your willingness to come forward. Tricia, how many days last week did you eat out at a restaurant for lunch?
Gosh, I don't remember. I think we went out once. We go out every so often to support accounts
okay.
and meet people and do those sorts of things.
So if you're out, then you're kind of working then. Margot, how many times a week did you go out for lunch last week?
I met a business partner for lunch one day.
And did your business partner pick up the tab, or
They
did you?
Yes.
Dale, how many days a week do you go out for lunch?
I almost never go out for lunch.
And so do you eat?
Some.
So
But because I work on a morning show, I actually get up at 3:30 in the morning. My day at work starts at 4:30. And so on a good day, I'm leaving around 1, but on a more normal day, it's more like 2:30 or 3. So given the choice, I take naps instead of eat. That's food for me.
Okay. And Neil, how about you? Are you in your office full time?
I don't have an office.
Oh, right, you don't have an office. Are you on the job full time?
Only about 20 to 25% of my time goes to Face Forward.
Okay. And you think that's true for the rest of the staff?
No, not at all. Amanda, for instance, 127% of her time goes towards it.
And how often does Amanda go out to lunch?
Um,
Or does she brown bag?
I think she does a little bit of
A
both.
little bit of both.
Yeah.
Last odd question. What are you driving these days? Dale, what's your car and how old and how many miles?
Everybody at KFAI drives a Subaru. Okay. It's funny, though. There are a surprising number of Subarus.
I just got rid of my Subaru.
Yeah,
and
well, see, there you
I
go.
feel like I left the club. It's, yeah.
So I do drive a Subaru. It's a 2012.
Oh,
Yeah.
did
So
you
it's-
buy it new?
Yes,
Wow.
I did. I
And
did.
the car before that, how old was it?
My cars before
Yes.
that?
How long do
gosh.
you keep a car?
Okay,
Dale?
so like I had a 1999 Subaru, and I kept it until, it had 180,000 miles on it, and then I switched. And
Okay.
had a Toyota before that was a 93. So, splurge every 12 years or so on
Okay.
a new car. But my wife has a good job too, so that helps.
And does she drive a different kind of automobile?
Same sort of automobile.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, not extravagant.
Ah.
Long-lasting
Margot? Oh,
automobiles.
long-lasting, yes,
Yeah.
sturdy.
Right.
Margot, what are you driving?
I'm currently driving a 2000 Volvo.
Do you know how many miles are on it?
I want to say 127,000.
Nice, great. Neil?
Honda Pilot, 110,000 miles, 2005.
Trisha?
Chevy Malibu. I don't even know what year it is. 2008 or something. I'm bad with cars. I have no idea.
Okay. And did it come to you new? Did you buy it new?
Used.
Used.
Yep.
And the reason I'm bringing this up because, the question is, can I make a living if I'm working at a nonprofit? And so I might look at what you just said and think, oh my God, I'm going to have to drive, something that's held together with duct tape and that I pedal, like Fred Flintstone. Does anybody ever talk to you about your car? Is there a lot of talk in the office about who's driving what and you test drove a car? And Margot, what kind of talk about cars is there in the office?
None. I mean, it's pretty exciting when somebody gets a new car and they'll show it off, but
Right.
yeah, no, it's
But
not,
nobody's
it's not
ever
an
kind of
issue.
pressured you to.
No, not at all.
Neil, you feel any pressure to keep up with the Joneses in terms of your car with the folks you work with?
No.
Tricia? Dale, what about you?
Yeah, no, not really. And the thing about KFAI too is that when we talk about things like that, we have to remember that working with several hundred volunteers, if we're going to do something, if we're going to have a meeting off-site, or if we're talking about where our office is going to be, we have to remember that for our volunteers, we have to be reachable. So we don't want to have a meeting somewhere that's not on a transit line, for example.
Okay.
Those are the sort of transportation discussions we have.
Yeah.
But no, there's not a lot of competition about who took the coolest vacation or
Yeah.
what sort of stuff you've got.
Because you'll talk in your next class, in your third class, your Business 200 class, about the costs of working in a for-profit corporation versus a nonprofit. And while you can't make blanket statements about those two silos, there are some real cultural differences that end up resulting in different costs to you. So that if you're driving the 2014 brand new something or other, your insurance cost is higher. And if you're wearing the suits, your dry cleaning costs are higher. And going out to lunch is higher, that sort of thing. Margot, when's the last time you went out for happy hour after work with work colleagues?
Well, we had a business partner happy hour event last week
Okay,
that I
okay.
put on, yeah. So, but just as friends, I don't know, a month ago maybe.
Okay, okay. Tricia, I don't feel like I can ask you that question because what's happy hour, what's promotion, that sort of thing. Dale, do folks at the radio station go out? I'm hoping you don't go out for happy hour at 1 in the afternoon.
Yeah, no,
regularly. Yeah.
No. Again, because my hours are so unusual, I'm not there for a lot of happy hours. I do think KFAI people tend to get together more in the evening at events. They'll see each other at a concert.
Oh, okay.
Something
okay.
like that. There's a real strong connection to the music scene. In fact, our program director Miguel Vargas is also a DJ, and so he'll he'll be spinning for some event sometime, and some other people from KFAI will go there to listen to what he's doing. And so, you know, there's that kind of socializing that happens outside of work.
2-minute plug, 1-minute plug from each of you. What you see as the positive piece about working in nonprofits. Tricia, you said that you contacted them simply because of their mission. Good timing, you ended up with a position there. Do you imagine that you'll continue to work at nonprofits? Why do you like the nonprofit environment?
Yeah, so I think of Finnegan's, I mean, we have both the for-profit and the nonprofit, so I think of it in the social enterprise realm. And that's really where I always want to be, because you have the competitive business nature of the company, but you're also, like, you see the end mission of what you do. You see how you're impacting your community. You're a part of the greater community. So I really like that mix, and I would love to stay in that realm for sure.
Okay. Neil, are you hoping to land a full-time job in a nonprofit, or are you still thinking about that?
No, probably not.
Probably not. Do you think you'll go do your mechanical engineering or follow music, or what?
Music, not
Music.
engineering.
Okay.
But, you know, I don't necessarily think that it's as black and white as just for-profit and nonprofit. I think it used to be. You know, you have your LLCs, you have your 501c3s, but I think more and more we're seeing hybrid business models being developed, right? We're seeing people and organizations come up that say, hey, yeah, we want to drive some revenue, we want to make profit, but at the same time, we do have values, we do have, you know, we are tied to a strong social responsibility, and you're seeing a lot more of those come up, and that's falling in the middle of the spectrum. For example, there's a huge push for benefit corporations to land in Minnesota, which is basically a hybrid of both for-profit and nonprofit. So I think whatever it is I end up doing will ultimately be driven by music, and we'll have some sort of for-profit entity to it, but we'll also have a huge social responsibility aspect.
Margot, benefits for you in terms of being in the nonprofit world?
You know, for me, it's all about that it fits with who I am as a person. It's about my personal mission, and this aligns with it. So it really, most days, doesn't feel like work. You know, I have a lot of friends that work in for-profits and do very, very well and take me out for dinner a lot, so that's nice. But I look at them and I say, you know, it's great that you do that, and for me, it's as long as I have enough money to be able to do the things I enjoy doing for fun. And
There's sources of income for him beyond that. The nonprofit I'm at now is polar opposite of that. $500,000 is half our budget total for the whole operation. So there are a lot of different sorts of environments that you can be in. I would start with, what do you want, really? You know, how do you want to feel at the end of the day about what you're doing?
Interesting. Margot, I'm going to steal your microphone.
okay.
And take this out to the audience. You've got before you, and I'm hoping you can borrow from your neighbors, you've got before you 4 experts, really, in the whole nonprofit, what you can do with your skills, sorts of things. Take a couple of minutes and take questions from the audience, and I'll bring you the mic. What do you want to know? There is this notion that Americans can only handle 20 seconds of silence. And so as a moderator, you have to just hang in there. Tell us who you are first, year, your major maybe.
My name is Letitia. I'm a senior, and I'm a marketing major. I think we talked about this before at one of the meetings, but I was still confused at, like, what's the difference? What makes a nonprofit a nonprofit, and what makes it not a nonprofit? Like, where does, if it's a, yeah.
Okay. And Letitia, I might take a stab at that first. But I need an accounting major who's graduating, and you know now what we're going to do to you. An accounting major who's graduating in spring. And it's the folks who put their head down and rub their eyes, like that gentleman right there. Are you an accounting major? Ah, an accounting major. I know you're out here. We'll just stay here all damn day if we have to. Accounting major who's graduating. If you're sitting next to an accounting major who's graduating, if you'll out that person, I think that was you. Oh, what year are you? All right, well, yeah, that'll do. Thank you for volunteering. Thank you for volunteering. Tell us your name.
M. Taylor.
M. Taylor. And you're junior.
Yes.
And here's your question to allow you to become a senior. Is your mic all the way on? Give that a test.
Yes. No.
Can you hear? Okay. What two things, and again, no help from the audience, what two things do for-profits do with their profits?
They reinvest it in the company and pay out to shareholders.
Excellent. Very nice. You just had those. So you reinvest in the company in terms of retained earnings, and then you have shareholders or owners that you provide dividends to. Nonprofits don't have shareholders, owners, the way that for-profits do. So the biggest single difference is what they do with their profits. You still need a profit. You've got lots of bills to pay. You can't run in the red. So you've got to manage a profit, but it's what you do with the profit that makes a difference. So everything is a retained earning, if we talk from an accountant's point of view. How would you answer that question from whatever point of view of the difference between profits and nonprofits? Tricia, you're right on the,
I know.
you've got a foot in both worlds. What do you see?
Well, I mean, I think there's a few different kind of components to this. So when Jackie started Finnegan's, she actually wanted it to be a nonprofit, but we weren't able to get that nonprofit status because of the product that we work with. The government loves to tax beer, so as a nonprofit, you're tax exempt. Because our main activity is first to produce the beer and sell it, and then we give away the profits or use the profits for good, they saw that as, okay, you have to be a for-profit corporation. So there's that component to it before you even get to what you do with the profits. Yeah, I don't know if that...
Okay, that's helpful.
So-
Because I've often wondered why the entirety of Finnegan's wasn't a nonprofit.
Yeah,
And
she
that's,
tried. She got a stack back from the IRS that was like this thick
Like-
of why it can't be a nonprofit.
Interesting.
So we'll see with the B Corp stuff if anything changes or
Okay.
there's some good things with that. So
Anyone else want to add comments as to the difference between the two? We kind of addressed it. Did that help to clarify it for you? Other questions? Here, let me give you a mic. Tell us who you are, your major, your year.
Hi, I'm Brandon Yoppel. I'm an operations major. I'm in my senior year. My question is, how do you guys balance decision making on spending money for wages and perks for employees and things versus your mission? It's how would you make decisions on that? Is it always all about the mission of providing the service, or are you guys trying to be markedly competitive with the profitable sector? For the radio, are you paying comparable to the people in the sort of the private sector?
Excellent. The notion of overhead.
Okay. Well, okay, so I was a disc jockey, right, and now I'm a news director, so by definition, I'm not really allowed near the money. But at NPR, those sorts of decisions were made by the people I talked about earlier who wear the nice suits. And for a while, that was part of what they were doing, was trying to create an environment there where they could attract the same kind of talent that commercial broadcasting would attract. And so, there was a time in the 90s where salaries were really kind of going up to reflect that. So, they made that conscious decision. But a lot of money flows through that organization, and so there are many decisions made day in and day out about how they're going to spend it. And just like any other corporation, down below those decision-making levels, it's just a scramble for funds. Everybody wants money for their project or their part of the organization. We want more money to spend in the news department so we can do more live coverage. Well, but over at the Current, they want to have Rock the Garden. And that costs money to do that. And so, and everybody who's involved in pitching for those different pots of money is going to make an argument why this serves the mission better than that other project. At KFAI, my current employer, much smaller organization, the money decisions are all about just staying solvent. Being able to keep the transmitter turned on and have a radio station another day. So when we sit down for a staff meeting, our new executive director, one of the first things he tells us is, what's the cash flow situation? Because that's key as to whether or not we can come back tomorrow.
I can maybe add a little to that. For us, we do have to be competitive, because in order to fulfill our mission, we have to have quality people, and there's a lot of social work jobs out there, so we do have to have that discussion a lot, and I think that the money conversation and what we pay people and what we spend on different things plays into every decision, and it's at our that discussion happens at almost every level in our organization, from the board of directors, our volunteer board of directors, to our senior management, executive team, even down to the kind of program staff. So it really is part of the conversation, but it really and it is. I think it weaves itself into everything. Mission is involved in every discussion we have, but so is funding, because there's a limited funds that we have available. So usually those conversations end in everyone turning to me like, what are you going to do to raise more money? So yeah, it does. It's a tough one. That is probably our biggest challenge that we face, is how do we continue to fulfill our mission with the resources available?
There's certainly an interesting bias, I think, in nonprofits, that your overhead, your cost for employees, where your offices are, all of that stuff should be really low. And in fact, one of the evaluation methods that we use in terms of effectiveness for nonprofits is that we talk about your overhead rates, or how much you use directly for client services to meet the needs of your clients. There's an interesting little video you're going to watch in your next class, the TED Talk, where a gentleman really kicks that in the pants and says, this is ridiculous, that if we want good people, if we want people to stay, if we want innovation, if we want creativity, if we want to really meet our mission, it costs a certain amount of money. And you would never say to a for-profit organization, oh, well, we are starting to clamor a bit about top executive salaries, but we don't question what's spent on marketing or those sorts of things. And yet, really, our demands of what nonprofits' missions are often more than we demand in for-profits. I have a friend who's a project manager at 3M. One of the projects he manages is the little scrunchie that you wash your Teflon pots with. And now that I know that Teflon flakes can cause cancer, I'm glad John's doing this. But I would love the day when his boss comes to him and says, John, we've got this great idea. It's going to save us a bundle of money. We'll pay you, but then recruit a bunch of volunteers. And we've got to maintain our market share, and we've got to do everything. We've got to continue to research and innovate and all of that sort of thing. But let's not pay anybody else. Just can't you call your friends? And that's a crazy idea. We would never run a company that way, except those companies. And so I'm sometimes intrigued, and I'll think about this in meetings. I'm never, ever bored in meetings. I think about the fact, well, if God had asked me, he didn't, but if God had asked me, Barbara, what should be in the nonprofit pile and what should be in the for-profit pile? What things should have secured salaries and funding and all that? I might put things like feeding the hungry, representing the underrepresented, promoting art, because I think that's really important. I might put that in the really important pile. And the scrunchie, although I don't want those Teflon flakes, I don't know if I'd say it's as important. Just my values about it. But it's interesting how we connect values with things like payments of salary and what we say is okay in one organization and not another. So just, I don't know, those thoughts that provoke me. We have time for one last question from the audience. Thank you. And again, tell us your name and your major.
My name is Maddie Parker. I'm a senior business communications.
I've actually been offered 2 jobs, one with a nonprofit and one with a for-profit. And the primary difference I noticed between them is the nonprofit actually has a much more comprehensive benefits package, which I think is pretty standard for nonprofits after doing some research. However, I know that a lot of nonprofits do run as small groups. And with the Affordable Care Act, I know that that will affect a lot of the benefit compensation within the nonprofit sector. How do you guys see the Affordable Care Act interfering with your competitive advantage in terms of benefit packages?
Great question, Maddie. Wow. Any discussions about that happening in your offices?
Sorry. Yeah, we actually just did a review of our benefits packages. And I think that for us, and I can speak for only at Keystone, I mean, one of the benefits that I think that especially some of our younger employees don't always consider is that we do everything in our power to be flexible around like family time. And that's one of the reasons when I talked earlier about a lot of the employees that come back, they come back for that, because once they start having kids and things like that, they realize that flexibility around those types of benefits are what really made the decision for them when they were looking. And it's not always the case when you're, just out of college and you don't have those considerations. So I don't think that as far as the healthcare benefits, we do have great healthcare, and those types of things, and it may affect it that way, but we also, there's a lot of other things involved in our benefits packages, and then there's the kind of not written down benefits that are still there, like the flexibility, the ability to work from home occasionally, and those types of things. So, and then it's just the feel in the office that a lot of people come back for. That it's more like a family. That sounds so cheesy, but yeah, it really does have that kind of feel, and you get that support in other ways.
Tricia, have you had talks at Finnegan's about healthcare benefits?
Yeah, we're working towards it. We do a cafeteria type plan right now, so the company contributes, if you have your own individual premiums, the company contributes a small amount each month, and so the company itself wasn't really impacted in a way. I know I personally saw my premiums go up, but that's because they added like dental insurance or something. So just premium changes on that side. But it's definitely something that we are very, very focused on having a really good vacation policy. So we don't track vacation days. The only rule is that you can't take vacation like 2 months before a big promotion. So St. Patrick's Day, and then we do a Drink Like You Care campaign. That combined with just really a focus on individual growth and leadership growth, and kind of that culture piece that she mentioned are really, really important. And it keeps me engaged. I know that for sure, and I think my coworkers would say the same thing, that sometimes those benefits are much more valuable than a complete, healthcare package or things like that. So that's kind of how we roll. But we're working towards more built-out healthcare packages. So,
Maddie, I actually heard on a competitive radio station to KFAI a discussion about the impact that the Affordable Health Care Act will have on companies continuing to offer healthcare packages. And the two people who were panelists were saying we're really in a wait-and-see mode to see how this is going to shape up. I won't be surprised if there's some roll-down effect from that, which may be positive, may not be. So that's a very insightful question. You're kind of thinking it before many others are about this. And if you want some inside advice about which job offer, I'd be happy to work with you on that. Not that I'd have any bias. Closing statement, one sentence, best advice you can give this room full of business students who are moving up, becoming professionals in their fields. Neil, what do you tell them?
Don't ask for advice. I found, and it's not because the people you'll be talking to aren't smart or aren't qualified, but because they are, but it's because they only know a fragment of your situation, of who you are, of where you've been, of what your heart's like, and as a result, you'll only get fragmented advice. So instead, go into a situation, go into a conversation with no expectations, and just try to learn about them, where they've been, how they've migrated through their lives, their ups, their downs, and then leave it on yourself to find what's valuable and apply that to your life. If you can't trust yourself to make the right decision, then you have some serious thinking and work that you need to do with yourself, right? Trust in you to be okay, and you will be okay, right? And try to find a balance between your interests and your day-to-day activities where they can come together to service your lifestyle. There's no value in living for Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Find a way that you can do something that allows you to live for Monday, and you'll be fine.
Wow. I want to hear applause. Yeah. Nice. And Maddie, I don't think when he said don't take their advice, he meant me specifically in regards to you. I don't think that was it. Margot, word of advice?
Yeah, I would just say, I would echo what he said, is follow your heart. Figure out what you can do that allows you to be able to do the things you really want to do for fun, and then work won't feel like work if you're doing something you really enjoy. So that's important. And I would encourage you to consider nonprofits, because we really need great, innovative minds in the nonprofit sector to really make a difference and have an impact. So,
Dale, sentence of advice?
Yeah. Ditto. Have fun, really. Just do something fun.
And Tricia, you get the last word. Some advice.
Yeah, I would say definitely do a gut check. See what you want your life to look like in 5-10 years. I know that's a really hard thing to do, but do you want to be traveling? Do you want to have, a savings account where you're building up money to do something for retirement? Kind of figure out what you want that to look like, and then do what you want to do. These guys pretty much all nailed it. You know you best, and you might see something in the future where you want to gain experience in one realm. Go with it, and then use that, and then figure out where you're at. And if you see something else, just keep building, keep doing what you want to do, and you'll end up in a really good place, I think. So.
Great. Well, now that we've had our meal, I can say with all honesty that we can say grace and be very grateful. So if you'll join me in another applause. Just a quick reminder to students as you're preparing to go into your next class, Journal 4 is due before your class, where you will find a position in a nonprofit organization that requires the business skills you've got. A paid position. I would print that position out and bring it with you to your third class. Thank you.